Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we have a very cool figure to take a look at. This is another of those random figures that were on Aliexpress that I stumble upon every once in a while. I spotted this one recently and thought, well, that's a pretty cool looking figure. I might as well go ahead and grab that one because sometimes they just end up like showing up for a little while and then they disappear. So I try to grab these random figures like this as pretty quickly as I can so that I don't miss out, because sometimes that does tend to happen. And I think that this one was a really cool looking Stygimoloch. It's actually on the website as a Pachycephalosaurus, but it's quite clearly a Stygimoloch. But it looked really neat, and honestly here in hand, like, it has a very high quality feel. Like, it's a hard, very hard rubber, it feels like, but it's got some pretty good weight to it, and overall looks pretty nice. Like, it has a very high quality appearance on top of the high quality feel, and far exceeded my expectations of what I was expecting. I honestly thought it was going to come as like a really cheap, kind of a hollow, not so good figure, and the images kind of would have misled me, which the images did, because it didn't make it look very good on the images, but because it was a sculpt I had never seen before, and something that kind of looked interesting, and it wasn't too much, I figured I would give it a shot. And then, maybe it'll be nice, maybe it won't be very nice, just you really never know, but it's far better than I expected it to be. So let's go ahead, jump straight to a closer look right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt, you can see straight away that there is some really nice detail on the face of this Stygimoloch. Like, it has some beautiful and quite vibrant looking scale detail. The paintwork isn't terrible. I mean, it's not great by any means, but it's not bad either. And you can see some like really nice paintwork overall, as it has like a yellowish brown appearance to it with some really nice dry brushing so that the scale detail pops quite beautifully. But you can also see some like random hints of pink here in the face, which I felt like actually looked pretty cool because it's not something that I personally expected. So it was kind of a pleasant surprise that there was a little bit of paintwork like that. Actually, it's more like a pink and a purple sort of looking at the same time. It's kind of hard to really make it out. Kind of has like a light pink, but in certain areas it almost looks like they've added a bit of a purple too. But you can see the nostril is sculpted out quite nicely right there. The inside of the mouth as well looks pretty nice. We have the tongue in there. There's not too much going on detail wise, but it is a pretty small mouth. You can see the inside of the mouth does sport a nice, again, pinkish coloration in there. The beak, I would have liked to have had more color on it, because it seems like we've just got the same color that is the primary body color, and then the same style of paintwork is where they like kind of just dry brush some of the detail out. It would have looked a little nicer if we had an alternate variation of color there, but it also doesn't look terrible the way it is. For the eye, we have a black coloration with a white spot, and I guess that's their attempt to insinuate eye shine. They could have just glossed the eye and given it a little bit more color variation, something that looked a little more appealing, but it doesn't look bad. It just could have been better. There's no gloss coat though that you can see. Maybe a slight hint of it, but not really. And it looks okay as far as the actual application goes. Like, it doesn't look super sloppy or anything, so that as well is a plus. And then moving up here to the top of the head, you have some gray here kind of for this spike right here on the face, but as you transition back a little further, we have like a really dark purple that starts to pick up, and you can see how smooth that transition is when we reach out here into the dome of the Stygimoloch. And looking at the detailing there in the dome, that is really impressive. Like, there is some very nice, very realistic looking detail included in the dome of the Stygimoloch right there. Super nice looking. And again, the transition where it starts out with a darker coloration and just gradually gets lighter until we get to the center, which is really light, looks fantastic. And you can also see again all of those trademark Stygimoloch spikes and stuff that lead off of the back of the head, and they as well are painted with some nice variations of grays. And they're not super precisely well painted. Like, they're a little sloppy. They don't look near as nice as the transition does here. So that could be, taken as a little bit of a downside. Like, you can see some of the gray has even run up here onto the dome area of the Stygimoloch, which is definitely sad to see. And I feel like the gray that they had used was just a little too thick. Like, if you look back here, you can see how thick it looks on the back of those spikes. But overall, it doesn't look terrible. It just could have looked better if they had used a better mix of the paint. But it doesn't look bad, and I still feel like it's better than what I was expecting, because I don't usually expect perfection from companies like this, and this already looks better than that. Which actually, now that I'm over here, one interesting aspect to this figure is that I don't see that pink or purple over here. Like it's very visible over here on the side of the cheek. Now I'm starting to wonder if maybe that was just some sloppiness from them painting the mouth and then they ran paint up here. I like this. I think it looks neat, adding in a little extra color variation. But over here, I don't really see it. Now, I don't know which one I like better. I don't know if I like it like this better or if I like it like that better. I'm not sure. I guess I can decide by displaying it on whatever side I'd prefer. But again, the paintwork looks pretty good over here, again, with that really nice dry brushing so that all of that detail pops and the eye looks okay over here as well. Once we start to lead down into the neck, you can see the neck is stretched out quite far because we have our Stygimoloch in the position as though it's ramming its head into something. So that's a really cool pose for the dinosaur. And you can see again that the texturing to the skin and stuff looks really quite nice throughout. A lot of dry brushing has been added to this figure, just like we saw on the face. You can see all of the detail pops quite nicely, but it looks good because of the fact that the skin color is so light, and then when they dry brush the detail out like this, it plays off of that lighter coloration quite nicely. And that's not always the case. I have reviewed a pair of Pentaceratops not long ago that had the same similar style dry brushing, but it actually made the figure look really sloppy, whereas this time it actually looks pretty cool. I actually quite like that. And you can also kind of pick up on some tensing in the neck. It's not overly defined, but you can definitely see it as we turn it and let the light hit it. Of course, if the dinosaur is ramming its head into something, you're definitely going to see some tensing in that neck. You can see the throat looks pretty nice here on the underside. As you move down into the underside, you can continue to see some nice detailing throughout. You have the chest muscles right there. The arms do have a few chips of paint out of them, and they're not perfectly painted. As you can see, they're kind of inconsistent as they almost lose all of the paint that they need right there. But you can see that again we have a darkening in the arms with the dry brushing, maybe a little bit too thick in the arm area, like specifically right here at the joint of the elbow. You can see it's just like a splotch of paint, but it looks okay as far as the sculpt goes. Just the paint is pretty sloppy in that area. And you can really see it over there on the opposing hand. Look at the nail paint. Like, we have nails painted with a black, but the paint is just everywhere. Like, whoever painted this one just didn't care anymore at this point. But you can also see some like hints of purples and stuff, like some really dark purples that run along the spinal column, as we have like some rows of osteoderms or scutes that run down the spinal column, and then a row around the side on each side of the dinosaur. They taper off pretty quickly though. You can see they end right here above the hip region and only pick up above the shoulder blade. Speaking of the shoulder blade, you can see that nicely in the sculpt, but I do quite like how they painted that and kind of had like that dark kind of purple that runs along the back of the dinosaur down the spinal column. You can see it picks up in a few different areas, like right here above the hip, and also kind of to elaborate the muscle definition of the thigh. This side you can see a lot going on as far as like the skin texture in the stomach region. It looks really quite nice. You can see how the leg is pulled back so that it's exposing the stomach quite beautifully for us to see how nice the detailing is. Again, a little bit more sloppy paintwork in the stomach as we have another big splotch of paint right there, but it could have really looked nice with this dry brushing idea they've come up with, but it, you know, it's a little sloppy at the same time. But you can see how like we have the rib cage displayed here in the stomach region, the skin stretching off of the stomach due to the leg pulling back. It all looks really cool. You can pick up on the hip bone again quite nicely right there. And then moving down into the leg, you can definitely see that the texturing looks really good. Like, I think that might be the nicest texturing that I've seen throughout the course of this dinosaur, specifically right here in the thigh. We have that darker purple again to highlight the muscle definition of that leg. And then as you move down, you can see the calf muscle is displayed right there. And we transition when we get to the foot to that darker purple for the primary coloration of the foot. Really nice foot sculpt as well, with some nice scoots down the course of the toes. Beautifully painted nails. They don't appear to be too sloppy or anything like the nails were on the hands. And then we do have a dew claw present, and it's actually got paint, so that's also a huge plus. And then moving up here into the tail, you can see a little bit more tensing and stuff, some more nice texturing, and a nice curve to the tail. I feel like the tail is a bit too short, which is not surprising when it comes to these kind of companies, but it's a little sad considering how nice the sculpt actually is for the tail to end up being a little bit too short right there. But it's not super distracting, it's not terrible, I would say. On this side, again, you can see pretty much that same style of detail in the neck region, because again, the dinosaur has its head straight forward as it's about to ram something, so you're not going to see too much difference as far as the sculpt goes on this side. The arm is also in a slightly different position, and due to the positioning of the arms, it almost appears as though the Stygimoloch is attempting to do the robot, but
You can also see that we don't have any nail paint on the upper part of the fingers, only on the underside like we had seen on the previous side. You can see that there is nail paint over there on that hand, but not on this one. So the paintwork, again, definitely is very inconsistent on this figure, and the further we get into the review, I'm really starting to take notice to that. You can see the rib cage again over here, but a lot less of the stomach region on this side due to this leg kind of obscuring it by walking forward, taking a step forward. But it does look really quite nice what we can see. Really nice creasing and stuff throughout. And again, I love how the like yellowish and orangish tones of the majority of the body just pop through that dry brushing. It looks really cool. And again, we can see that we have the area here of the hip highlighted with that darker color, as well as the muscle definition sort of down here in the thigh highlighted with that color, but they kind of miss the mark. It starts to run down the course of the, defined area, but then just leads down here. It's like they just really didn't care on this one. But you can also see that the paintwork isn't very precise, as we have a really light yellow here, and that just doesn't look like it belongs. It looks like they should have applied more of like that darker orange in that area, and then kind of tried to dry brush over it, but they did not do that. As you move down into the leg, though, you can see the calf muscle yet again, the kneecap kind of present here in the front, and yet another really nice looking foot sculpt with, again, some nice scoots down the course of the toes. Decent looking nail paint, but it's not picture perfect. Kind of appears as though some of the paint has been chipped off of those scoots, but I'm not sure if that's meant to be that way or if that's just a chip of the paint. I'm not too sure. But as we move back up here into the tail, again, you can see the tail looks really quite nice, and you can also see the skin stretching off of the tail, as this leg is actually really far forward as it's running into, obviously, ram its head into something, but you can see how the skin is stretching quite nicely. So they have done a good job as far as the fine detailing goes. And as we lead out the length of the tail, again, you can see a really nice curve, but we actually have, yet again, some missing paint out here at the tip of the tail. We didn't see that on the opposing side. You can see it looks a little more precise over here, but over here it's just a little bit inconsistent, I'll say, as far as the paintwork goes. But I will say that overall, it's still a really nice looking Stygimoloch, and I would say a good candidate to buy and repaint if you don't like how inconsistent and kind of ugly at times the paintwork is of this particular version. I actually think it looks pretty nice as far as the paintwork and the tones of color that they've chosen for it. I think it looks really cool, but it's super inconsistent as far as the actual application of the paint goes, so that kind of drops the overall quality of the figure and kind of makes me want to repaint it, but I'm not too sure if I will, because I, at the same time, kind of like the way it looks now.
On the plus side, it does come with a stand that helps it balance, but it stands really nicely without it. Like, shockingly well balanced. If I can actually get it on its feet, you can see it stands really nicely. It'd be cool to buy two of these and then kind of create a diorama with the two of them headbutting each other and then give them some repaints. Could be a really cool looking, image or diorama you could create, since it's perfectly in the position to ram its head into something. But it definitely balances really nicely, which is yet another of the pluses of this figure. As far as a size goes, it's actually quite sizable. For a length, you are looking at about 10 3/4 inches, or around the 17.5 centimeter mark. The highest point probably would be the hips, so you're looking at about the 4 3/4 inch range, or about 12 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our unbranded Stygimoloch, and you can definitely see, like I was stating, it has a pretty good size to it overall, much larger than I was expecting, and again, with that solid, hard rubber feel, it has a really high quality feel. It's too bad the paint application doesn't match up quite to the high quality feel of the figure overall, but at least it does sport an impressive size on top of everything else. So this unbranded Stygimoloch figure is a pretty nice surprise, honestly, because again, it's a lot nicer than I was expecting it to be, and I love these random figures that pop up on Aliexpress from time to time. It's just like such a joy for me to find those. I don't know why I've been like completely addicted to finding these random figures for so long, because there's such a mystery about them, and I feel like they have a really fun collectability to them because they really don't have any actual brand associated to them. I have no idea who sculpted this figure. It doesn't look like a bootleg or anything like that to me that I know of personally. Maybe you guys might have seen something that it could have come from, but it's something that I haven't seen, so I'm always really happy and pleasantly surprised when I find a new one of these totally unknown figures. Kind of confused as to why people don't want to take credit for them when they're usually pretty decent, but This one, again, is a really cool interpretation of a Stygimoloch with a pretty nice looking sculpt, really nicely displayed as far as the pose goes, because it kind of gives you that, I would say, exact pose that you would expect to see on a dinosaur like this. And due to the pose kind of in that crouching position, going in for like that headbutt, it creates some really cool possibilities as far as buying another to create that diorama of the two of them kind of hitting each other. Definitely a really good idea on the part of whoever did make this to come up with a pose like this for the dinosaur, because it kind of opens up the possibility of, coaxing people into buying a second just to display with it. But the sculpt is really nicely detailed. There's a lot of really fine detail to be found. They've done a great job as far as like showing off the movement when it comes to like skin wrinkles and folds and stuff, stretching of the skin. They've got some fantastic skin texture throughout the course of the figure everywhere, which they've brought out really nicely for the most part with a nice dry brushing, and they've defined all of the muscles in a really nice way, tensed muscles in the neck and everything. So it really does have a great sculpt, not only from the pose standpoint, but also from the fine detailing standpoint. The paintwork is a little iffy because it looks great in some areas, but so inconsistent in others. Like the nail paint of the hands is just dreadful. The paint of the spikes on the back of the head aren't really that great because the paint is too thick and they're really inconsistent up there. And you also have like missing paint out onto the tail and stuff. Like some areas look really good, and I do love the tones that they've gone with. And overall, I feel like the idea behind the color scheme is really quite nice. It's nothing overly flashy, and this is a prime example of why it doesn't always need to be, because I still think it looks pretty cool, but due to how inconsistent and sloppy the paintwork is, it definitely drops the figure overall as far as like the appeal factor goes. But on top of that, it does balance quite nicely, which is a huge plus as well. I'd say the only real downside, aside from the paintwork, would be the fact that the tail seems, a good bit too short, but overall, it's definitely a fun Stygimoloch figure and something I can say is worth a purchase, especially if you're going to repaint it. But I will include a link in the description to where I purchased mine on Aliexpress, so if you are interested, make sure you check that link, go buy this really cool Stygimoloch, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.